Sawete, mihi nomen est Stella, ad hoc est Batgirl the Oracle, the Barbara Gordon podcast, episode 201 for January MMXXI. Batgirl the Oracle is brought to you by the Batman Universe and Waiting for Doom DC OCD podcasts. And I'll tell you why specifically once we get to that part. Batgirl the Oracle is also brought to you by MileHighComics.com, your new and collectible comic book store. Mile High Comics has an inventory of over 5 million comics from the gold, silver, bronze, and modern age, and over 100,000 trade paperbacks. If you're not into the vintage stock, Mile High Comics also has a subscription service called the New Issue Comics Express, offering a discounted price for comics ready to hit the shelves. So if you're looking for vintage back issues or a great modern subscription service, be sure to check out milehighcomics.com. Well, Happy New Year. We're in 2021 right now, and everyone is under the belief that it's going to be better than 2020. And so far, it seems like 2020 has just sort of spilled over into 2021. So I hold out hope that it may be better, but it just feels like more of the same. But despite all of the unrest that we are experiencing in the good US of A, and COVID numbers being higher, it is nice that the vaccine is getting out there, and I know it might be difficult for some people to get it right now. I'm blessed working in healthcare temporarily that I was able to get the first round, and then my second round is coming up shortly, and I'm hoping that it'll come out to people soon. And the inauguration is coming up, and who knows what that specific day will look like, but at least we can perhaps hold on to some hope that the next 4 years may be brighter than what we had encountered before. So let's just be optimistic, I guess we'll say. 2021, we just started, and I know people want to get rid of the dumpster fire that is 2020, but we can't just like push off and be like, it's a new year, because we're totally still in it, people. But the call for love and empathy and compassion is still out there. I'm definitely throwing that out there. I wanted to, in the beginning of this, just talk about the best that I've seen of 2020, sort of the best things that I've encountered that particular year. So however much of a dumpster fire that year was, I think that there were some great things to come out of it. And I'm going to specifically talk media, but there are certainly other positive things that we could talk about. So just book, movie, video game, and TV show, what would I say would be the best that I have experienced in 2020? And I think all of them, with the exception of, no, I feel like all of them maybe came out in 2020, with the exception of one, I think, the book. So these are all my opinion of the best of categories. Of course, you may disagree with some of these. I know with one in particular, I think people may disagree, but here's my best of 2020. So the best book that I read in 2020, so I think this is the only exception, was Just Mercy by Bryan Stevenson. And I highly recommend that to anyone, really. I think that gives people a good idea of what our criminal justice system and prison systems look like, and that both need some heavy reform, and just history of abuse and misuse of justice. And also, I think that discrepancies and disparities between white people and people of color, and sort of the three-strike system, and different criminal acts that are being weighed differently depending on race. So just getting to learn more about that, and Bryan Stevenson himself, and just being a great man and doing what he's doing and fighting that fight, and proving that you can be one person and the odds can be stacked against you, and the stuff that's going on, but you can potentially, work and push back against that, however hard it may be. So I think it's a good lesson and gives us hope as well. So that's my best book that I read in 2020. The best movie that I watched in 2020, hands down, and that came out in 2020, though I think in France, it came out in 2019, but in US, it came out in 2020, was Portrait of a Lady on Fire. I actually just rewatched it. I guess it would be like maybe my third or fourth time last night, just to like refresh. And whew, man, just such a beautiful film. And I've been waiting on Harold and Donovan for years to do something with it on questions. Don't even ask them because they don't have answers. And I'm just sick of waiting. I might as well just do a commentary on my own and put it on this podcast, because I can certainly talk about it at length. I recommend it to anybody. My top video game, this is probably the one that'll cause controversy, is so game of the year, right? Is, of course, you can see behind me the two pop pigs. It's Last of Us Part 2. However heartbreaking, heart aching, and troubling it was, forcing me to do things that I did not want to do. It creates, I think, conversation. I mean, I had a 6-hour conversation with Harold. It, I think, depicts the world. There was an article that said, that this game is problematic because it shows everything as being very gray, and we need more black and white films. I'm like, you can't have black and white films. Yes, some things in life are very black and white, but the world is so muddied and gray. And so I think it really captures that. And empathy, I think it I was going to say forces you, but really, I mean, if you're experiencing the game well, and I think as the creators intended it, you start to feel empathy towards this character that you should also maybe hate because of what she does at the beginning. But on the other side, you're watching Ellie do these terrible things as well. So it's really thought-provoking, and heartbreaking as well. But that's certainly my game of the year. The TV show of the year, this one was harder just because I feel like I've watched more TV this year than I normally would have. But on Netflix, I think I'm going to pick Queen's Gambit. I thought that was a great show. Not only the lead actress, Anya Taylor Joy, I think is her name. Joy Taylor. Uh-oh. Anyways, she's a great actress. I think it looks into and portrays a particular facet or form of mental illness, and it portrays it well and respectfully. And I think mental illness in general isn't portrayed often, and if it is, it's probably going to be the killer in yet Law and Order or something like that. So just investigating and looking into that, and gaining a better understanding, and grasping it more. And yeah, it was interesting. I mean, obviously the time period I think was interesting. I do like timepieces, and having a female lead was great in a boy's world with chess and all of that. So I highly recommend Queen's Gambit. And I think that's it, my best of 2020. So all of those, I think I would recommend all of them, but of course, Lou too. There's a caveat with that one, as I talked about in that podcast. It just depends on the particular person, and that I would just be, wary about whom I recommend it to. It's interesting because my nephew, I guess he got The Last of Us Part 1 remastered, and then The Last of Us Part 2. And so he was talking to me as he was going through, and I feel like he really sped through everything really quickly. And he was just keeping me apprised of what parts he was at and things like that. And I, at one point, I did tell him, take some space after he finished the first one and everything. And he was just going through so quickly. And I just feel like that's especially, well, both parts, but I think the second part, and really you can't rush through it. I think because it'd be forcing, you're like, how can you fast forward through those emotions? I think that the game really compels you to feel. I don't know that that's the best. I mean, perhaps it's the best if you want to keep yourself emotionally well and not go through those emotions. But for me, I really, and that's why, because I could have totally marathon that game. I mean, there were some nights, if you remember my Lu 2 diaries, that I was up late, but I was purposefully pausing as well. And I could have marathon, but I think it was good for me to pause and ponder what I had undergone in the last, the playthrough that I just completed. So there you go. Well, now we're at the Find Your Joy segment, and it does somewhat connect to the best of 2020 because there was a contender. There's a contender, and I think this is true also with people in the real world that are not on my podcast. Another contender for Game of the Year that I do want to talk about, but Shag's mac and cheese, a comfort and joy. What's been giving me joy in these particular times? I have been, I continue to read, and something that has been giving me joy is that I have gotten 2 interlibrary loans. So I should be down to 5. I'm down to 5 in my Rory Gilmore's reading list left of that 10-year journey. So that is giving me joy. I just have to, wait for the books to come in if they can find them. And then, of course, you pay $3. So it's an expensive journey. And I really liked the Netflix show that just came out, Lupin. And it's not Lupin the Third, but it's it's live action. It's in French, though you can have it dubbed if you want to, but I don't really, the only way I would like that is if it were animated. So live action, I don't need people's lips slapping out of time with what is being said. But it is about a man who models himself after Lupin, but very much it's a revenge story to a certain extent, but he's trying to clear the name of his father, but he is also somewhat having to get into revenge mode against one particular character. And I think there were only like 5 episodes, so this is part 1, and it ended on a cliffhanger, so I'm really excited about that. And I wasn't excited about the cliffhanger, but I'm excited about what the future will hold for this particular story. And I was pleasantly surprised to see a dark skinned Black man as the lead character. I thought, yes, this is great. Because for the past year at least, I've been really interested in learning more about colorism and also starting to critique it more in comics and other media and seeing where it pops up. And so I was thinking after this happened, like, what if I were to, each time I read a comic or something, critique it and say, oh, there's a such and such. And then I thought, no, that's actually probably not a good idea. So I think maybe what I'll do is, because this doesn't happen often, I'll have to consider this, whether this is like a bad idea or not, but to at least applaud, like, thank you for showing someone who does have a darker complexion than not, because it seems like lighter characters are in the forefront more often in comics, and even characters like Storm have been lightened, if that's the correct term. So there are some weird things happening in comics, and I don't know if this is a recent thing or just a continuation, but I actually watched an interesting video with Princess Weeks on YouTube where she talked about colorism and comic characters. And she also critiqued the New Mutants film, because one of the characters should have been a darker skinned, was he from Brazil? And he wasn't. They got a lighter skinned actor. And then she was showing lots of things with Storm and other people, and like a question of, like, you kind of look at it and you wonder what ethnicity or race are you. So I'm kind of interested in this because I've been wondering about it for a little bit, especially with Helena Bertinelli of the Batgirl and the Birds of Prey run. I wondered often. I just thought maybe she had a tan, but then I remember the Benson sisters verified that, yeah, she is in fact Black. And so I wondered, did you not want to take the leap and make her a darker skin tone? So I do wonder about that. Not to say that we don't have lighter skinned Black people, but I feel like comics, I don't know if it's artists or editors, lean towards the lighter. And I have some thoughts as to why, but I need to do some more investigation. So all that to say that I am looking forward to seeing a better representation of the wide array of of skin tones that we can have, and not just with the lighter. So when I saw Lupin, I was super excited, and that they, just didn't go with like a lighter skinned actor. So all of that, there you go. And so that's been giving me joy. And then since we last spoke, I have played 3 games. I played Hellblade Senua's Sacrifice, which is not the most uplifting, but another great example of media exploring some facet of mental illness, in this case, psychosis, and being really respectful about it. So that was a worthwhile game. There's that word that I like to use, worthwhile game for sure. I got a little annoyed at it, if only because of the game mechanics. They don't tell you much about how to do things. The voices in the head tell you when to do things, but it's not like X or whatever. So it took me, there were a couple instances that I did not learn that I could do something until way later on in the game, and it annoyed me. The other thing is that there's some issue with her. I don't want to spoil in case you decide to play this game that's 4 years old. And if you die too many times, the game erases your file and you have to start over, and things like that make me super nervous. I don't need that to happen to me. Luckily, I did not die enough times for that to happen, but I would have been upset. And I also played Thomas Was Alone, which was a delight. I it's so cute. Claire, the rotund blue square that can float, she's the only one, is, and well, yeah, it can, well, float, I guess we'll just go with that, is my favorite. And such a great and inventive story, and fun little puzzler. And then the other game I played, which could be a contender for game of the year, though Lu 2 won out, is Ghost of Tsushima. Ooh, so I've heard so many good things about this. I was really interested, I think, once the first story trailer or teaser popped up, just because Japan is an interest for me, and playing a game set in Japan, feudal Japan, seemed really interesting. And I really enjoyed it. The story is really interesting, and I think really the proof is that that game took me 7 days, I think, to beat it, because I was sitting there, not really marathoning it, but I was just so intrigued that I wanted to learn, what happened after that. I remember the first day that I had the disc, and this is from Gamefly, by the way. The first day I had the disc, I was super tired, but I really wanted to start this game. And so I thought, you know what, I'll just go to bed now. It was 8, and I'll wake up at 3 and I'll start the game, and then I can go to the gym at 4:30. And I did. And it was, yeah, super powerful. It's interesting because the game, ooh, I wouldn't say across the board, but for several characters, there was almost a lack of redemption, and I would need to seek out and, I think, explore more with the culture, and perhaps as someone who knows about that culture more. But there is just like a lack of forgiveness, a lack of redemption, as in like clearing your name, or making up for what had happened in the past, which is interesting. Like, no matter what you do, you can fight against this, but you'll still have this tarnish to your name, which I found really interesting. Learning more about the culture, I thought, was also interesting. And certain aspects of it, like what happens to Jin, and uh, it's hard for me because I don't want to spoil anything, but what happens to him after he does this one thing to basically save everyone was really interesting, and I want to explore that more and better understand that. And then I guess I will spoil. So I'll say spoilers now for Ghost of Tsushima if you want to play it, but because I do want to say something about the end, but Jin poisons a whole camp of Mongols, even though his uncle told him not to. And then he's kicked out, basically, of being a samurai, or like he's now on the run, and the shogun basically did not approve of that, and so he's now a traitor. And so I'm trying to understand about that, and why it would go that far. I mean, I understand we're talking like it was dishonorable to kill the Mongols that way, but I just wonder why he would be so heavily disciplined that he'd be locked up, potentially disowned by his uncle, lose the family title, all of that stuff. So I thought that's something that I need to explore a bit more, in regards to that. Because in killing that Mongol camp or destroying that camp, they were able to take back, um, a big settlement point and really turn the tide of the war. So it's just interesting of if this is a dishonorable act, look at what you had done to save people. So I guess that's the ends and the means sort of situation. But in the end, you are the very end. You have to go up against your uncle. And so your uncle your uncle offers, well, you have to die basically. You have to die. Your family name will be destroyed, as in like erased from history, and you're going to duel it out with your uncle. So you duel it out with your uncle. You're playing as the ghost. So, of course, you're going to win. And then you have the chance to either spare the uncle and be hunted for the rest of your life, or kill the uncle because he asks for it. He asks for that final manner of respect, and you'll also be on the run for the rest of your life. But in killing your uncle, you'll also destroy two family names, really. So, this, you had a choice. You had a choice, and so it's not quite narrative dissonance, but I felt like I was forced to do this. So I felt like it was quasi narrative dissonance, but I ended up killing my uncle. And it was mainly because of this respect that he said, if you would, this one thing, do this one thing for me, this one respectful thing for me. And I thought, how can I deny him this thing? I don't want to kill him. I want him to live on. I want his name to live on, but he's asking for respect, and after he feels like I've disrespected him so much, I need to do it. So it was hard, but this game gave me much to ponder and think about. So I highly recommend it. I did not do all the side missions. I did the main ones with like the monk and Lady Misako and Lord Shimura, I think his name is. No, Shimura is my uncle. I can't remember what the other teacher is called. So I did those major ones, and then here or there I might have done something. So I did not do the full, like the full experience, but I felt like it was pretty full, and I'm ready for the next game, which happens to be Final Fantasy VII Remake, which Donovan is super psyched about. So that one is a close game of the year second, and I think many people might argue that that's game of the year period. So there you go. That's all I have, I think, for this beginning part. So the image of the podcast is a bit misleading. So I did sort of the thing that annoys me on comic covers where you show something and then that thing doesn't actually happen. But the image that I showed for this part is our world's at war, and I am going to talk about it, but I'm not reviewing anything, I would say. But I do talk about it most compared to the other things that I will do. So it's kind of a quickie, but I'll talk about it more, and then I'll tell you where you can go to actually learn more about our worlds at war. I just didn't think that it was as worthwhile. I even asked Michael Bailey, and he's like, you don't really think so. And then even reading through it with Barbara, I mean, the Nightwing title potentially would have been like I could have sat down and discussed the whole thing, but I have to make some judgment calls here. So we'll start with these quickies here. And it's interesting because on my Excel list, it just said Harley Quinn number 10. But then that story didn't end and it went on to 11 and 12. And I will say that even though I'm not going to fully review it, that they were fun stories. So I do recommend them. And it actually brings in like the whole crew because you have Nightwing, you have Robin, you have Cassandra, and then Barbara to a she's probably the smallest extent, though significant to a certain point. So if you like Harley Quinn and want a fun story, I would say look at Harley Quinn 10, 11, and 12. But again, I've just decided that it's not as much worth my time, and I think I'm just going to expend the majority of my emotional feelings on the second half of this episode, which is the Three Jokers. So Harley Quinn number 10 is Brilliant Mistake. Harley Quinn 11 is The Girl is Bats. And Harley Quinn 12 is A Date Which Will Live in Infamy. And they all have, I do believe, yep, they all have the same credits. Writer Carl Kiesel, penciler Terry Dodson, inker Rachel Dodson, so of course it's beautiful, and colorist Alex Sinclair. Number 10, September 2001 cover date, 11, October 2001, and November 2001 for 12. So I will give the publisher recap that I got from Comixology and then what Babs is doing in there. That's how the quickies go. Reintroducing, this is number 10, reintroducing the original Batgirl. But how can that be possible when Barbara Gordon, the original Batgirl, is wheelchair bound? She'd certainly like to know, and so would Nightwing, Robin, and a certain new hero out there named Batgirl. Meanwhile, Harley is still in the clutches of Killer Croc. Bo and Surly of the Stooges have a tender, defining. Oh, I see. Meanwhile, Harley is still in the clutches of Killer Croc. Bo and Surly of the Stooges have a tender defining moment, and the Quinettes get a new member, Matches Malone. Remember how he died but didn't die, but actually did die? But he's not dead. So here, Babs in a wheelchair with handles. So there was a mistake there. I'm sorry, Dotsons. Here's that Batgirl took down Croc and assumes it was Cass, but it wasn't, and plans on communicating with Batman about this. Harley Bat, as I'll call her, encounters both Robin and Batgirl and gives them a run for their money, even knowing Cassandra's name. So those are some interesting things. You should see these fight scenes, how she holds her own, even when Nightwing gets in there. So if you ever thought that Harley was incapable, you should probably read this, or perhaps they give her too much power. I'm not sure. I'm not a Harley connoisseur. The fact that she knows Cassandra Cain's name, she just calls her Cassandra, of course, but the fact that she knows it is really intriguing. I have questions like, how would she ever know that? Because to my knowledge, Barbara only calls Cass in the privacy of the clock tower. So, yikes. If I feel like this is a content, like a slip up that should not be, but if Harley has that knowledge, think about what other knowledge that she would have. So that's a bit scary. Okay, 11, guest starring Nightwing as a carjacker, which is funny because he does have to. Harley steals his bike and then he like throws someone out of a car and takes it. I did crack up at that. What could lead him to such a dastardly deed? Why, Harley Quinn, of course. How will our hero or villain escape this one? Meanwhile, Oracle is determined to stop Harley once and for all, and she's not the only one. Nix and Buster are scheming against her. Matches Malone is about to strike, and let's not even talk about the Stooges. So Oracle reflects on her time as Batgirl. Of course, we get the Killing Joke refresher since we always need one of those. There is a quick shipper moment with Dick before he goes off to help Robin and Batgirl, who are still having trouble with Harley. Gosh, maybe they should be fired, Batman. Dick is angry that someone would wear Babs's old costume, so he's defending her. The team reconvenes in the clock tower to figure out where Harley's hideout is, and Babs stresses down Dick for letting his emotions get in the way of catching her, but he says he couldn't stand Harley tainting her good name. So it's one of those things, right? Where, of course, Babs is the one who's the level-headed one. It's totally like with Officer Down, right? That she needs to be that strong, level-headed person who's also clear. I mean, she definitely is feeling everything that Dick is feeling, but she like knows mission first, and then let's get together, and then we can be angry, which she does in the third part. She has that, but I do appreciate Nightwing standing up for her good name. And then finally, number 12, Harley's first year ends with a bang in this special extra-sized issue. It's games within games as Bo and Surly try to capture Harley. Bo and Carrie try to hook up at last. Nix unleashes his plan against Harley. Buster's true colors are shown. Jack Happy meets his destiny, and it hurts. Allegiances shift, and Batman strikes. So the team finds the hideout where Batman already is because he was Matches, and then Babs wishes more than anything to put on the costume once more so that Harley isn't the last one to have worn it, which I can totally see that. And I think that, she has this in a quiet moment, and I think that was definitely the way to handle it rather than in the midst of a mission going off like Dick is. So I think that Babs is certainly treated respectfully and well written here. Okay. Another quickie, Nightwing number 60, which I'm going backwards in time a bit because I know, what was it, 62 was the tie-in to Joker Last Laugh. So, whatever. So this is The Threshold. I even wrote in my notes before last laugh. Writer Chuck Dixon, penciler Trevor McCarthy, inker John Lowe, colorist Gregory Wright. October 2001 is the cover date. Officer Dick Grayson finally receives his badge. Exciting. Now all he has to do is live through a full-on gunfight with Transbelvan mobsters and a meeting with the Secret Society of Cops. So here Bab sends Dick a cute, I have weird notes on this, a cute cartoon to congratulate him, then talks with him as he prepares to go to Amy, his partner's house. He is worried she might have feelings for him, but Babs is unconcerned and says, just remember, we were partners first. After dinner, Babs makes fun of him since Amy has a husband and children, and she says with his instincts, he'll make detective in no time. So just a cute little tale. And then my final quickie is Batman. Catwoman number 88, subtitle TK, writer Bronwyn Carlton. Never heard of that person. Penciler Carrie Nord, inker Mark Lipka, colorist Roberta Tews and Jameson. January 2001 is the cover date. When Catwoman accidentally finds herself in the middle of a firefight between the Gotham City Police Department, Commissioner Gordon, and the villain Banner, will she be able to escape the explosive fallout? And of course, keep in mind that she was the person that was first thought to have shot Jim during Officer Down. So Babs and her father are having dinner, and he explains that the mayor has asked for him to stop investigating Catwoman, which makes him angry and makes Babs ask all sorts of questions. And that is basically where she appears. Okay. So even though I call this reviews, I feel like they're quickies, but I'll talk a bit about our worlds at war in case what I go over may interest you somewhat. So this was a comic book storyline published by DC Comics in mid 2001, a crossover storyline that spans several different books, including books starring Batman, Superman, and Wonder Woman, The Flash, Green Lantern, and a number of supporting characters in books. Creators involved in the crossover included writers Jeff Loeb, Joe Casey, Mark Schultz, Joe Kelly, Phil Jimenez, and Peter David, and artists that included Mike Wieringo, Ed McGuinness, Doug Manike, that's not how you pronounce it, Ron Garney, and Leonard Kirk. The crossover, which occurred mainly through monthly Superman titles, Wonder Woman, and a series of character-themed one-shot specials, dealt with the heroes of the DC universe facing the threat of the cosmic force known as Imperiex, who attacked Earth. It sounds so familiar. Who attacked Earth for the purpose of using the planet as a staging ground for the hollowing of the entire universe. Thanks to the sacrifice of Strange Visitor and General Rock, Earth's forces managed to crack Imperix's armor, intending that Darkseid would subsequently use boom tube technology to transfer Imperix's energy back to the galaxies that he had destroyed. However, Brainiac 13 appeared on the battleground with War World and absorbed the Imperix energies, vowing to use them to rule everything. In a desperate gambit, Superman dived. I always wonder about that. Superman dived into the heat of the sun, thus gaining a massive power boost that enhanced his abilities significantly. Rapidly realizing that War World could not be destroyed without releasing Imperiex and triggering another Big Bang, Superman and the Martian Manhunter formed a brief telepathic link with the remaining major combatants, including Darkseid. Who on earth would have him on your team? Lex Luthor, again, Steel, and Wonder Woman, to explain their new plan. With Darkseid's powers weakened, they would have to use Tempest, empowered by the faith and strength of the Amazons, focusing the energy through Steel's new Entropy Aegis armor, which was created from a burned out Imperiex probe, and with Lex Luthor activating a temporal displacement weapon. Superman would subsequently push Warworld through a temporal boom tube, sending both Imperiex primes and Brainiac's consciousness back 14 billion years to the Big Bang, destroying both villains through a combined effort. Destroying both villains. In his final moments, Imperiex Prime realized in an ironic twist that the imperfection he had detected in the universe was himself. The planet Daxam was involved, temporarily stolen from its rightful orbit. Whenever I see Aegis or Aegis, I think of the shield that both Minerva and Jupiter would wield, and it has a Medusa head on it. It's a powerful shield, but who knows where they got it. So the story ran through the following issues: Action Comics. Well, I'll just say books. How about that? Because then I've got to do all this stuff. Adventures of Superman, Batman, and then we have some one-shots: Batman, Flash, Green Lantern, Harley Quinn. We've got Impulse, JLA and JSA, Nightwing, Superboy, Supergirl, Superman. There's a Secret Files and Origins with Superman, Superman the Man of Steel, Wonder Woman. There's a Wonder Woman one shot, World's Finest Comics one shot, Young Justice, a Young Justice one shot, and then Superman Batman. Whew, okay. So, all that to say that if you want to hear coverage of the full event, you should go to Waiting for Doom, that site, and then the DC OCD episode 22. And I had no idea what DC OCD stood for, and it stands for DC Comics Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. So it's episode 22. They're going to cover it. They have covered it. You need to go over there. I'm just going to talk about some of these things. So I'm going to talk about 3 of the one shots: Batman, Nightwing, and JLA. And I'll go in order of their drop dates. And I will say that Nightwing, of the 3, Nightwing has the most Barbara appearances, like so much that I could have reviewed that whole issue. So Batman, Our Worlds at War, #1, Hidden Agenda, writer Ed Brubaker, artist Stefano Gaudino, and colors Roberta Tews. August 2001 is the cover date. Here's the publisher synopsis. Batman investigates what appears to be a government cover-up regarding a mysterious crash site in downtown Gotham. Plus, the animosity between President Luthor and Bruce Wayne reaches a fever pitch, setting the stage for an upcoming storyline in the Batman titles. So Batman has Oracle break a coded file and reads notes on something called the Metropolis Project. And as soon as she breaks the code, the file begins erasing itself, and Oracle prints as much of the file as she can. Nightwing, Our Worlds at War, did die and die again. I think that's probably die and die again. Writer Chuck Dixon, penciler Rick Leonardi, inker John Lowe, colorist Noel Giddings, and digital chameleon. September 2001 is the cover date. And this synopsis I actually got from the wiki, because Oracle was in it so much, and I considered reviewing it, but I decided not to. Earth is at war, and the people of Gotham are reduced to looting and rioting in the reaction to the crisis. Sounds familiar. Into this comes Nightwing, searching for Oracle, who said she needed him. He arrives at her clock tower apartment and is contacted by Oracle again, who tells him that she uncovered a strange computer virus at the same time that she got wind of the coming of Imperiex. Tracing this virus, she became convinced that the virus is from the future, and that it sent her the images of her death, which is a very disturbing scene, or several scenes on the holograms that she has. They make their way to Star Labs, where they are met by Professor Orenstein. Oracle calls in a debt for help she gave him, telling him that unless he allows her access to Project Tomorrow, she'll die. Oracle and Nightwing enter the temporal field around the project and emerge in the early 20th century, under gunfire from a hood hired to kill a lady in a wheelchair. Racing through various historical periods, the pair come under fire at every turn, whether in past or future, coincidence, or someone reaching into history to eliminate them, ? Finally, in a relatively recent time period, they set up a ruse whereby they allow holographic projections of themselves to get shot, convincing their potential assassin that they're dead. Then they wait it out until they can lock in on the signal from the present-day Star Labs. However, when they return, Ornstein is not expecting them. It transpires that they have arrived 2 days before they left, which explains why they were allowed access with few questions asked in the first place. Elsewhere, Oracle's survival is noted but ignored. It is thought that the possibility of her tracing the virus's source has been greatly reduced, and that other matters are far more important in the moment. Some moments of note. Nightwing says that if the world is going to end, he wants to spend it with Babs. What better thing for a guy to say to a woman? Or I should just say, for one significant other to say to the other. Nightwing's first look at Babs's vehicle, I'm pretty sure. since he said, "Oh, this is your ride," so that's interesting. And also, she is going by Cassandra, so that's her sort of incognito name. Not sort of, it is. It's her incognito name. Nightwing pushes Bab's chair. That seems like a no-no, but she tolerates it. There is some sexy time while they wait for Star Labs a couple times. It's like, well, what do we have to do but wait? Na 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 na. And just for Professor Allen, my chief hairstyle correspondent, it seems like Babs has an 80s hairdo and headband, which they're going back and forth through time, so I suppose we can allow it. Frankly, I had no idea what was going on with all of these. I'm like, this is crazy. I feel like you can't hop on and just take some of these one shots out of context. You kind of need to understand what's going on with this entire event. So that's why I'm not reviewing any of them, because I think I would have had to have put in some major time to actually understand and do a respectful job of reviewing. So the final one shot is JLA, Our Worlds at War #1, a date which will live in infamy. We've already had that subtitle, so that's interesting. Writer Jeff Loeb, penciler Ron Garney, inker Mark Morales, colors Tanya Hori and Richard Hori. September 2001 is the cover date. And here's the synopsis, the publisher synopsis. In Our Worlds at War tie-in, Imperiex has initiated his first strike on Earth. Now Earth's first line of defense, the JLA, is going full throttle against him and his probes. Witness the full impact on Earth as the war against Imperiex begins, and one battle is quickly lost in a big way. So where does Oracle appear? Well, on Earth in Gotham City, Batman is having trouble keeping contact with Oracle, who does manage to relay the message that besides Gotham, Topeka, Kansas has also been hit. Batman asks her to round up Nightwing, Robin, Batgirl, and even Huntress. Oh my gosh, if she must. He also tells her to contact the Justice League and tell them that Gotham is his priority. Well, you should trust the Huntress after her helping you out in Joker. Last laugh, but oh boy. So there you go. Our Worlds at War. For some reason, that our worlds, it's a weird linguistically, it doesn't work very well. Again, you should go to Waiting for Doom, episode 22 of the DC OCD podcast for more on that, because I really cannot help you. Besides 60 time, there's not much that I can note on those particular issues. So next up, we have listener emails, and I have to find these here, turn on my Wi-Fi. And I think I just have two, though I did get one today from Tim Levine, which is funny because I was listening to a Who's Who episode, and I think he was called... Oh, man. Okay, let's see here. I know there are two of them. There we go. So these are both from Ian Prime, aka Ian Miller, and they're both on episode 200. Dear Stella, I'm only a few segments into your monumental 200th episode, but it has already been both challenging and incredibly delightful. Though as a writer, I have been grappling with the issues that you have from a different perspective, seeking out the voices of Glenn Lowry, John McWhorter, Chloe Bowdery, and others in that group who are often opposed to Dr. Kendi. I do think these issues are essential to wrestle with courageously and compassionately. And I have to admit, I did not expect what I got with your conversation with Gorf. I was listening to Chuck Dixon's weekly Q&A video a few weeks ago. On one of these videos, he staked out Gorf's claim to create the Birds of Prey and proclaimed Gorf's deservingness of thanks. He mentioned that he wrote Tim Drake deliberately to honor Gorf and his friendship with Dixon. I thought that was nice, but when I listened to you talk with Gorf, I understood why he would be so inspired. Because Gorf was, quite simply, one of the most amazingly charming, warm, funny, nay, hilarious people I have ever had the pleasure to listen to. That was one of the best conversations you have featured, and I eagerly look forward to the rest. Yours incompletely, Ian Prime. And then he comes back. I finished the episode, and the Brian Q. Miller and Scott Beatty segments were incredibly rich and delightful as well, though I'm still blown away completely by Gorf. It was wonderful to hear more tiny details about Steph's Batgirl run and the Bat books in Beatty's era. Thank you for 200 episodes, and here's to the next many years as you catch up to your start, like in oh no, in Ouroboros. Yeah, the little snake that eats its tail. And yeah, so Tim just tells me that, oh, yes, see, I remember, see, Shag called him Mr. Jennifer Schwartz Levine, which cracked me up. But she was actually one of the keynote speakers at the Bowling Green State University, and I loved her talking about Batman and the women in his life and how well or how poorly they are sometimes written. But he says, so I want to mention to you that if you haven't picked up the last stories of the DC Universe, one shot from December, you really need to. Saying anymore would be spoiling. So I have heard that from others as well. And I think I will be covering that in February. So January, my plan is that this episode, in the back half that we're about to get to, I'm doing Three Jokers, which I don't think I really ever wanted to do, but we'll talk about it. And then in February, I'll talk about the Batman title after 100, just what Babs is doing, and then that last stories. And so I think then starting with March, I should be caught up and I'll be able to do look at Batman and Nightwing and what Barbara is doing in those particular ones. I think that's it. Thank you for writing in if you did, and you can always post on the Batman universe as well, which got a facelift recently. And my email is batgirltheoracle@gmail.com, so be sure to check it out there. Okay, well, when I come back, I will be looking at Batman, Three Jokers. Who'd have thunk? But first, Zaius' Radio Hour featuring Broken People by Almost Monday. See you guys soon.